I'm going to come up to a point that you made, Neil, and then we're going to go around the room. You talk about third-party providers. I mean, do you judge other organizations on the fact that it is, to use the phrase, male, pale, and stale? I mean, is that something, because I do, including ourselves, and I look at our organization, and sometimes, we have a panel, and I look, for example, we have a strategic leadership webinar, and the last 4 people have all been white males of a certain age. And we're going, David, seriously, you better, pay attention to what's happening here. Have we got to the stage now where we have that sort of built-in radar, and that we're aware that, this is not quite right, actually. There's something wrong here. Neil, let's start with you, and then we'll go around the table.
I don't think it's on everybody's radar. We've not yet started setting formal targets for third parties to have a level of equality, but I think it's a way that we would like to go. And I think you've got to set those challenges in order to sort of drive change and drive systematic and networked change will be much more significant. And again, I don't think those third parties, many of them, really have it in their mindset I don't think they're necessarily always developing their own people. Never mind looking for the most diverse organization that can be of top caliber and let them step up. I mean, my motivation, part of my motivation, I mean, yes, a better world, absolutely. And I've got a daughter. I want her to go out there and have all the equality and all the equity that is necessary to be really successful. But also part of my motivation is to have the best security here for Unilever, and I'm going to get that through a diverse organization. And that diversity needs to extend to these teams that are providing us that security. And they've got to step up in their capability. We're asking them to step up in their technology capabilities and integrating technologies. And I think we need to ask them to step up in terms of their recruitment programs and their training programs and their views of the world. So I think that's a way to go, David, and it's a good reminder. It's something that we've talked about before, but I think it's not something that we've applied into our contractual base, not at a serious level. And we're touching thousands of people through these companies. So I think that would be a good place to go.
It's interesting because I work with two of the largest organizations in the world. I don't work with you, but I feel connected to you. I think about what you do a lot. And when I'm doing our stuff, often I say, well, how does this work for Unilever? And the other is the International Federation of the Red Cross. Again, 170 countries, 140,000 offices, 14 million volunteers. And of course, when you're at that global level, you have no choice. You have to be diverse because that's the nature of the global thing. And yet, as you come closer to the center and closer to the top, sometimes you're still aware of, it may not be race or color, or it might be all gender, but there's still that flavor of we're not quite getting it right. One of the things I think that we've learned absolutely over the last 20 years is that there is nothing that cannot be disrupted. We see disruptive financing, Uber, Airbnb, delivery, whatever it might be, Deliveroo. In the security industry, we've seen absolutely no disruption whatsoever over the last 20 years. Basically, we still do it in pretty much the same way. We have people out there patrolling. We have almost no sort of radical recognition of how technology has changed things, or et cetera, et cetera. Are we ripe for disruption? I mean, is that something that would actually sort of bring something to the game to just say, guys, that was 20th century. We're in 2022 right now. Why the hell are we still using 1980 models? Feel free to answer that, or feel free to just discuss anything else that we've had around the table. Nathan, let's come to you.
Hi, sure. So something that came to mind, what I do, especially for increasing the number of women in cyber, let's say on the panelists or the speaking events, what happens sometimes is I get invited to panels. So what I do personally is I politely decline and give them back a list of women I recommend to join the panel instead. That's number one. Another tactic I also like to use is help out organizations wherever I can. For example, I have friends who have events like such as the Ally of the Year Award, which is coming up in June 5th, that recognize the allies that help women in cybersecurity. That and the other event is Cybersecurity Women of the Year Award that was created by Carmen Marsh, that recognize and award women for their accomplishments in the cyber field. Both together, I think, is critically important to help address the problems that we discussed around gender diversity.
Thank you. Lee, what are your thoughts? Because I mean, you're actually trying, you are disruptive. You're probably, you are actually bringing a disruptive approach to everything.
Yeah, I love to be a disruptor, but in a positive way. And I just wanted to say that I saw some Marmite on Neil's shelf behind him. So I miss Marmite being in Mexico. So let's talk about Mexico too as well, and LATAM. It's a hugely discriminative area in terms of diversity. And actually, I think I saw an old colleague and friend of mine who's actually joined us, Goretti, who works for the United Nations. And she is an amazing female in security young professional too. And I think we can always do better. I love disruption, but I always try to disrupt in a positive way. And Alexandra, who's on here too, myself and Alexandra have become very close, and we often throw things back and forth in terms of advice from one another. She'll reach out to me and say, hey, got this predicament, what's your thoughts? And vice versa, we'll do the same. I definitely see, I don't want to beat on our industry, because I think we are doing better, right? And that's where I always want to position myself. I don't want to be a suppressor, and I certainly don't want to fan the flames. That being said, I always want us as a group to strive for perfection, because there are still opportunities that women specifically are not afforded. But what I'm loving is groups like ISMA, OSAC, as is yourselves, David, are actually really trying to positively disrupt. They're looking at job requisitions, an example, right? And I think Ken kind of went over this in a broad spec earlier, or kind of brushed on it. And if you look at all job descriptions and requisitions, they're set out completely wrong. And actually, they literally from the offset, they discriminate against women. So most women won't even bother, right? They won't even bother applying. They're then completely turned off about entering the security and risk management industry. So then where does that talent pool go? I think we need to do a lot better job, grassroots, getting around to schools, getting around to universities, having more panels like this. And again, I go back to what I said at the beginning. It saddens me that we can't have the conversation. And I ask people and say, why are you not willing to take on the conversation? And again, I go back to, people think I'm just all about the kindness games, but I actually run a very successful security and risk management company, in Mexico, Sport LATAM globally, grew 47%, through the pandemic. Our, talent pool is mainly made up with strong women. I encourage my Mexican partners to, because, and I can quite happily say, because we've had these tough conversations, they are Mexican elitist men, right? And no fault of theirs, it's been conditioned in their life for them to be like they are, a certain air of arrogance, that they can get whatever they need. So a lot of the female talent pool has just been brushed to one side. But what I'm trying to do right now is shine a spotlight on all those women within our group who are doing amazing. And again, I'm trying to bring more, and I'm trying to say to them, hey, look, have you had a look at, the female talent pool that's out there right now? If not, why not? Why are you not asking those questions? Why are you not encouraging them to our space? We need more of it, because at the end of the day, I love the blend. I love to have, a complete diversity, a complete demographic, because for me, when you're doing strategy building, it shouldn't be us, the leaders that are on the call that are sharing the voices. It should be our teammates. The teammates should be bringing the ideas to the table. Our job is just to steer and help them find those ideas. And again, we talk about nourishment, we talk about talent management, we talk about nurturing, but how many of us actually really do it? How many of you really are mentors? How many of you actually really listen? And what I actually mean by that is, have you actually been an acute listener where you zip this and you just allow that person that's in the conversation to, have that voice? I have an amazing wife who is a huge success in her own right. In fact, she's more successful than me. I have 2 daughters. So I have a lot of skin in this game, should we say, in terms of where I want women to succeed. And that is why I'm so passionate. And I'm also willing to take on what we call the haters, because a lot of times people will try and shoot you down. And what I do is then I step into that conversation and say, hey, let's have a conversation. Contact me directly. Let's take this offline. Do you know how many people actually take up that conversation? Usually 0. Because again, what they're trying to do is trying to provoke you in going into the weird and wonderful rabbit hole that they want to take you down. But at the end of the day, I would still encourage you to try and reach out to them, because we need to find that common ground. And like I said at the beginning, we need to understand what are the triggers, how do we come to the flashpoints, and then again, if we keep saying we want to be bigger, we want to be better, well, let's see how we do it, because again, they're all big buzzwords, right? And I think often we don't actually do the scoping of what this looks like. And again, how do we put the roadmaps moving forward? You mentioned about it that, we've been talking about this for 30 years, but in essence, we're not really further forward than what we were 30 years ago. And it's quite shameful that we're still discussing this, and then you still have a view on the left or you have a view on the right, and it baffles me that we are still having to have this conversation, because again, it goes back to what I said earlier, setting the stage, building a platform for voices for all, because we really need to empower one another. And again, I never created the kindness games for likes. At the end of the day, you either like me or you don't, but I don't get upset about it. It is what it is. And, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but guess what? I'm going to try and lean into your space, challenge you, and encourage you to always be a positive and better person than you were yesterday.
Of course, you say you want to be disruptive, but not in a bad way. That depends who you talk to, because so that's often a matter of perspective. Danyetta, I want to pick up on a point Lee made. Mm-hmm. What do we say to the people who says, "Man, what are you just doing? You're so last century. We don't need this anymore. We've got equality." I am a successful woman. I have got a job. I've done this in a male world, and I didn't need help from anybody. You're putting women down by thinking they're unable to stand on their own 2 feet. You are building an inequality because you don't trust women. We don't need this conversation. Danyetta,
that's an interesting perspective, because it's a conversation that really came out of other women coming to us and saying we needed to have this conversation. Mm-hmm. And for me, I would say lived experience. I think, everyone can come to it based on their view, right? I know a lot of women feel like, I don't want to be separated. I don't want to be pulled apart, because that makes me feel like I'm not part of the team. And I think there's a place for both. And I found, even in my own life as a security professional, there's a place for both. There's a place to be able to be inclusive, but at the same time to also to be understood. And I think for many women, they look for places like this. They look for these conversations because, as I think Lee was alluding to, we're talking about a greater society where that conversation has not been. It's been more on the side of, okay, father knows best. That was an entire show, So we're trying to really kind of not just start the conversation, but continue the conversation and to expand it so that other women can get to that same point of feeling and knowing and understanding that where their place is, not just within security, but across the wider spectrum when we talk about companies and organizations. And I think that that's a conversation that we still haven't quite got there yet with. And as we've talked about multiple times, the inclusion aspect of it is still difficult. So as much as I appreciate and I very much value that there is the perspective out there, and I definitely don't want anyone to feel like, hey, we're off on our own and we're trying to separate. No, this is about bringing everyone on board, and everyone has a different way of how that happens for them. So, what we do in WIS and what we do across the board is about trying to bring everyone up in the boat, and everyone has a different view of how they got to the boat and what they need to get in the boat and what it's going to take for them to rise. So I definitely understand how that perspective comes about, but I think I would say a lot of the collective of the women that we've talked to through WIS and have connected through WIS, this is something that was very near and dear to their heart, of being able to have a space that they feel comfortable with, and also being able to honor, which was the key of this particular webinar, a place to honor the men and the women that come in and are allies.
That's a nice word. Honor is a nice word. I like that word. We'll put that on. I like it a lot. Alexandra, I see you walking around. Are you happy to come in and have a chat? I didn't want to talk to you while you were driving, clearly, but do you want to come in and let us know your thoughts?
So yes, I can have a final chat. I have to go off though in 2-3 minutes. So my final thoughts on this is, going back to the question earlier, David, is that I think it's actually very positive that we can have this conversation right now. Personally, I never had an opportunity like this to have a conversation like this in the past, in 20 plus years of experience. So including a CSO, other vendors, people from the cyber, other from resilience, other from security. So I think it's a great start, I would say. And the other thing I would add is that we have to keep on, speaking up and speaking up and speaking up, whether, because a lot of time I find people don't come from a wrong place, I would say, when they don't want to include or have a diverse team. They come from a place of not knowing, or I would say sometimes being scared of difference, right? So speaking up, educating, focusing on awareness is a huge role we have to undertake. And I say we, because it's my responsibility. I would say it's everyone's responsibility around this table today, right? We speak up, and if people don't like it, yeah, okay, let's ask a question. And I'm saying this because I've asked questions like this to people who told me, I'm done with DNI, it's bullshit, it's all over the place now, it's only focused on women, and it's only focused on people of color, and where is the place of us, for us? And I'm saying this to men, because I've heard and spoken with actual men who feel threatened by these initiatives. We have to factor that in. We have to take this into consideration and bring everyone around the table. And that goes back to the reason why when we did the first webinar in January, David, I really wanted to focus not on gender, not on color, but just on cognitive diversity, because I think this is what will truly make a difference. I don't care what people look like. I don't care what people feel like, whether they feel male, female, trans, or bi. I'm not a pro at those terms. Sorry about this, but what I care about is what they have between their two ears, and this is what we truly have to work on and ask more questions. Exactly like what Lee was saying before, asking more questions and listening. That's all we have to do to make sure that we have a more diverse working environment, I would say, and more inclusive. So again, I really have to go now. I'm so grateful I jumped in, by chance. I knew this was happening. I wasn't sure I could attend. So thank you. I'm so glad I saw the people I already knew here, and I'm so glad I met the new people from this roundtable. And let's stay connected on LinkedIn, everyone. Thank you very much, David, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Alexandra, and all the best. All the best to you. Thank you for coming on.